Welcome to my talk about my journey with software testing. So my aim was to give like a bit of storytelling, so you know how stupid I was in some, and also like hopefully to give you like practical go-to strategies and like kind of get you thinking like what's a pragmatic way to test like for my situation. Um, and before I go there, I'm just curious, like by show of hands, like who's like testing regularly in their. Okay, so maybe you'll be like too advanced because this is more like kind of beginner, intermediate, focused talk. But hey, like if you get value out of it, awesome. Um, all right. So this is me. This is my face. I've been like self-taught. I started out like as a freelancer, so you know, like going in and out quick of like um, code bases, and like I get like super big satisfaction of like simplifying things. Like sometimes I even like go like overboard and like we have to build the thing, and I'm like refactoring something. And so sometimes I get carried away. I work at like Tribe Social. It's like a white label content platform. Really enjoyable, really fun team. And I love skateboarding and soil health. So yeah, who this talk is for. If this is you, you're probably in the right spot. So if you're like not testing, or if you're like testing, but it feels kind of tedious and you're like, why am I even doing this? Then probably hopefully you'll get value out of this. Yeah, if you want to get like more confidence and more value out of it. So yeah, like how I started like at the early career, this was me, like I was just like carrying the whole like code base and like the safety, and you know I was like manually testing. I didn't make a lot of mistakes, but it was like really tedious. Like I would be like really super cautious and I would go like really slow. So I thought, okay, there's got to be like a better way. And I hear about testing and I'm like, okay, like maybe I should explore this. And I had like a vision that I just want to be like lazy but you know productive. So I want to kind of the system to support me. So I want it to be a kind of almost like a augmented human, like a bionic person, like you see Iron Man, like with his assistant, you know. So that was like my vision, and yeah, it was like not great. Like I was like trying to learn, and I was just like creating more work for myself, and like it wasn't really going anywhere. So maybe like the first year, I was like, you know, have like deadlines, so I have to like build the thing, and in parallel, I learn in parallel, and I wasn't sure if like I'm getting the skills better. It feels like I'm going backwards, even like creating more work for myself. Like I should be testing, but it didn't give me like value. And a funny story, like political issues I wrote there, is I was at a company and I wanted to get like support, or you know, like I went to my superiors and be like, okay, like we have this app and it's not tested right now, and I would like to learn. So I think this would be a good opportunity, right? So like I would like to start testing this app. And they're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. Like, why you want to do this? I think like it will help our like release cycles get faster. And I was just kind of like, I didn't have like a clear request to the leadership. I was just saying like, okay, I want to learn like testing through the app. And it was like kind of a mess because in a sense, it almost sounded like I was saying that the QA department is like too slow. I can like make it better for them. So the lesson, there's like an important lesson there. It's really good to like share that I'm learning something, but like making my problem other people's problem is not a good way to go about it. So, and I didn't even have like a clear request. It's more like kind of learning in public. So that was an important lesson for me to like take ownership of my own learning. And getting support is great, but ultimately I'm the one like responsible for my learning. So I went from painfully slow progress to joyfully slow progress when I adopted this mindset. And like I didn't really ask like permission. Like the way I envision it is kind of like a doctor doesn't like ask permission to wash his hands before each client. Like that's just what you do. And the the big click for me was when I understood like the principles, like the why. behind testing, and that gave me like clarity of like what I shouldn't do. Like because a lot of times like you're writing some test and it's just a waste of time. Like honestly, like you're better off like doing the manual test, and like you get the confidence that you need that it's working, and you just move on. Like it's fine. And it gave me like there are some resources, I'll get to those, that help me to distinguish. So get more pragmatic. It's like you shouldn't like there's no like should be testing. Well, you should be testing, but sometimes manual is okay, sometimes automated is better. And like a little life hack, like testing wish list. So I was like really pragmatic from the point onwards of like not getting like sponsored to learn. My approach was like, okay, I'm working on something, and like just like the first little part, maybe I have like a full day for a feature, and the first like 30 minutes of the day I would like try to test it, and it wouldn't work, and I would just like move on. And then the next day I'm working on something else, I like try to test, okay, I get a little bit better, and I would just move on. So that worked pretty well, but it needed like consistency and intention. So there's no like magic bullet. And getting like the little wins is what helped it stick as a habit. Because in my first like attempts, like I would test something, it would be tedious, and I would realize actually I could have just like tested it manually, and like it would have been like so much better, and I just wasted a bunch of time. It didn't make me want to like improve my skills at testing. But other times when I would be learning and I would test something, and I would get like a little dopamine hit that like, yeah, like this actually supports my, like I just saved so much time not like clicking through the app so many times. Like this, like automated test helped me a lot. So that little dopamine hit like really helped me like come back to it and make it a habit. So I would say that's pretty important. Just noticing like, did I actually enjoy like working on these tests just now, or that was like tedious? And if it's tedious, just like don't do it, or like change the way you're doing or you're going about it, because it's really like to improve your flow, not because you should be testing. In some teams, like you should be testing, but in my situation, I was like more in like small teams, or I was like the one creating the tests. So it's like a bit of a caveat to my talk. Yeah, so what made things click for me was just like the biggest one was like reading the blog from Kenzie Dawes that he explains like why are we even testing, like why should you even have like automated tests, and just being more like pragmatic about it. And from that point over, like I was progressing like my skills like pretty slow still, but like consistently in the right direction. And refactoring was like a huge thing. And coding dojos are really good for like an intentional practice, right? Because it's like so easy to just get like sucked into like the busy work, like okay, we have to deliver results, but at the other side, we have to like build our skills, and it kind of outside of the normal busy work. So coding dojos are really great of like not having to have your own discipline for learning, and a community is just like kind of keeps the inspiration fresh. So refactoring can be like its own thing. It's like such a deep subject, and sometimes, you know, in my like little 30-minute session of like my learning session, I would just like actually refactor and not even get to the test, and actually it would still be good. Like it still make progress to make like the code like easier to work with. And incremental refactoring, like learning safe refactoring techniques was like huge, because a lot of times we have this kind of it's tempting, like it's a sexy idea to like, okay, just scrap the whole app and like rebuild from scratch. But I think like where like how professional works is like incremental. I mean, sometimes it makes sense to scrap, but I think that's a really the exception. And big props to Nicholas and his book. That helped me a lot to give me like practical techniques. And yeah, like why even do the test? Like it's really all about confidence. It's you can do like manual tests, and they give you confidence, right? Like you do your manual test and it works, and you're like, okay, yes, I can go to the client and say like my like solution is working, and you're right. Just the worst thing is like if you don't have confidence, or if you have like false confidence, you're like lying. You in the back of your mind, you know that some edge cases are like, hopefully they don't touch those edge cases. So as a professional, you really want confidence. And the testing is just to make like the process of getting that confidence cheaper and like less friction, because manual testing is just really tedious, and you end up like missing a lot of cases, and you don't come back. Like you build a feature and then you build something else that might break that first feature, but you don't test like the whole app all the time, and probably you shouldn't want to. So it's really about being pragmatic of like, how do I save time on getting my confidence, so that, you know, I can just like have like a breezy workday, and at the end of the day, I go to my client and confidently look him in the eye and just give him a thumbs up, and everything's good. So that's the ideal, right? So then there's all kinds of like practical questions about like how to get that confidence, because like the automated test, you can have like the end-to-end. There's some trade-offs because you have to do like setup, and it's like slow to run. If you want to like run all your cases, that's going to be like longer. Mocking and not mocking. If you're like running, when you're doing your manual test, it's like everything's connected, so you get like maximal confidence that everything's hooked up properly. And when you're mocking, you're actually like sacrificing that. So in a philosophy that I learned is like you do the absolute minimum, because you want to have like the cheapest like bulk confidence. So every time like you mock something, you're actually reducing it. So you're gonna have to come back and do like manual testing to get that extra confidence. And sometimes it's okay, you gotta do like almost like case by case judgment of like, do I like sacrifice some of the confidence by mocking just for convenience? Like maybe some, I don't know, Stripe. Like I have like integration with Stripe. It's smarter to just like mock that out completely, or let it run through, but like in Stripe has like test mode, that could be actually quite good. And flakiness is like a whole thing. It's like, like your test is like failing, but not because your program is like bad, or, you know, the other thing, it's not really flakiness, but like if you wrote badly your test, is like it's passing, but your program is broken, and you come to the client like, yeah, it's good, but it's like broken, so you don't want that. So the ideal is like that you get like a perfect match, as close to a perfect match as you can. That like when your test is passing, it means that it's good. It's failing, it's telling you something important that's actually relevant, it's not just noise. So that was like the biggest aha moment for me, like reading this article, Avoid the Test User, from Ken C. Dodds, and understanding what is implementation details. That was like the biggest unblocker, that like kind of switching from the paradigm of I should be testing to like I'm just testing when it's worth it for me, like when it works for me. And when you think about it, it's like when you're doing manual testing, you're pretending to be the end user, right? And then you use the program. And let's say you're doing like backend development, that's more like you're pretending to be a developer, right? Because like a developer will come in and they will build the front end that connects to your API, and they have certain expectations. Like I hit this endpoint, it will create a user. I hit this one, it will edit. It will give me this return values. So you're like pretending to be someone when you test manually. And there's a danger when you're writing automated tests that you're pretending not to be like the end user. You're not pretending to be a developer, but you're pretending to be a test. So you're like creating a whole kind of category, like it's kind of like circular reasoning, you know, like you're adding some behavior just to satisfy the test, but it's actually not relevant to the end user or to the developer user. So I want to show you like an example we have recently. So we have this transcript, like we're generating transcripts. So we have like video uploads, and then we translate these to like get closed captions. So in here, this is like generate transcript and upload subtitles. Yes. Thank you very much. Is it okay like this or more? Okay. So in this, I'm just going to focus on here. We start, yeah. So we start here. If there's no content ID, Then we return like an object with the error. And this is the actual implementation. We don't do anything with the return value. We just, it's like it gets like a message queue, and then it just kind of, it does its thing. Like if it errors, it's okay. If it works, it's okay. So this is the actual implementation code. But in our test, what we did is we're actually expecting that the return value will be like error. So it's like, if I go in the implementation code here, I'm going to run the test here, the transcript one. So it's passing, which is good. And so let's say I change my implementation code here and just like return undefined. Now my test is failing, but this failure doesn't indicate that it's wrong behavior. This actually doesn't matter at all. So what we did there is we created more work for ourselves. We have like a third user to maintain for. Usually we should just care that like the end user's behavior is what we expect, or the developer user's behavior is what we expect. And the test should be just in line with that, not doing its own thing. Let's solve this. So that was like a big turning point for me. Understanding this was like, okay, I'm not like working just because I should. Now it really became like a support system for me. It really served me and not the other way around. So that was like huge pivotal moment for me when this clicked. So that's a little litmus test for you. Like when you're working with your tests, like for sure they should fail. Like if you make any changes to your program, almost inevitably it should fail. But like why it fails kind of tells you if you wrote a good test. So let's say one failure case, for example, for me that happens a lot is I add a new field to a database model. Let's say a user, we now added like last logged in date, right? And the endpoint is actually like multiple endpoints that get a user. They now have this extra field coming in. So I was expecting that one object with like a bunch of fields is coming in, but actually like one more field is coming in, so it's failing. I expect one thing, but another thing happened. So it's like I have my personal assistant saying like, hey, this is like happening differently than you expected. Are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, oh, okay, thank you for informing. I didn't think of this other endpoint that is like changing now. So that's when you know that the test is like working for you. It's not testing implementation details. And on the other hand, if like I deleted that like useless return statement, I'm like why do I have to fix these tests all the time? Like what they do, they don't actually inform me of like relevant changes. Then that's an indication that we did implementation details. So just something to look out for. Testing trophy was pretty good. It's like kind of like rule of thumb, just like what is the like highest most efficient like confidence, like the cheapest confidence to get. End to end is like kind of like slow to run. So it's okay because it still like touches all the pieces of the system. But integration tests are my personal favorite because they're kind of like a best of both worlds, but you end up like doing decisions of like what I mock or like which piece, like do I want to like kind of test a smaller piece or like a whole page, or so you think about it pragmatically like this. And for the end-to-end test, I end up just doing like manual tests like as like kind of final check, which is good enough. A big like support for writing tests is like when they're readable, it's like I'm a kind of like a designer, like I write a story, right? And so if writing it in a single block, it helps to avoid like jumping around to different contexts. Let's say you have like a fixture for like an API endpoint. It's better to have it in line, so I can just like read from top to bottom like a story. Like a user has been created in database, and then they logged in, and now we can see their last login date. So it's like self-contained, makes it really easy to work with. And don't be afraid to have like kind of longer tests. Like for example, I put like my failure cases like in the same just inline. Like I try to create a user, but I'm not an admin, so it fails. I try to create, but I forgot to add their name, so it fails. and then I have a valid one. So that's usually quite good to like keep like not a huge amount of tests, and that they read like plain English, like a story. So my go-to strategy, like on the front end, I mock the responses, and I just look at like my backend tests, like what is the expected return value of an endpoint, and I just mock that out, and I go through like the behavior as the user. These like modern testing frameworks make it like pretty easy to write like code that reads almost like plain English, like user clicks on the button, save, and then you expect some request to be saved in a certain way. Backend test, like I almost always use like a real local database so that I have like more of like the actual behavior flowing through. Because if sometimes I see people, they mock out like the fetching of the database, and it's like, okay, you assert that maybe like the SQL is wrong or something like that. So the more it goes into the actual execution, the real execution, the more confidence. And a little parenthesis, like clearing before each instead of after each is pretty useful, because you can you can isolate to a single like test run, and after it finishes running, you go and inspect the database contents. So that's actually pretty useful. And also, if a test like fails, then you don't get like polluted state. Like if it like fails to do the cleanup, then the next run is gonna fail for useless reasons. So before each is probably the best. And in some cases, I just like go outside of the box, and I think to myself like, okay, I just like, let's say maybe like a Stripe, or like I had a case recently with like uploading files to S3 or whatever, and I would just like let it run. I have like a special script that just runs by itself to reduce the friction, and that works like pretty good actually. I'll show you like an example a little bit later. So some of these tests are like really slow, and it's kind of like a in between of like manual tests and automated tests. Like my manual test, it's kind of like an automated manual test, right? That I just like, yeah, like I can do whatever would take me like 5 minutes. I do it in like 10 seconds, so it's like slower. It's kind of like helpers, yeah. So I'll show you an example of this, and you'll see like, because it's slow, you don't want it to be like in the continuous integration. And like I had one example, it's making like requests to OpenAI, for example, and then I like manually review. So you don't really need this for like in the CI. And I don't know if I mentioned this before about CI. This was like, anyways, I would recommend, for me personally, I wouldn't put like tests in the CI. It's tempting, like at first, because when you're starting out to do like making a testing suite, you might have flakiness, or you might have like different issues. And if you put it in the CI, you're kind of creating more work for yourself, because like blocking, you started out with just manual tests, right? And then you add this, but like it kind of blocks your releases. So you have to like go and check in. So I would recommend for the first little while, you just do, you just use it like locally. And then when it's like consistently working when you expect it to work, then put it in the CI. But otherwise, it creates more work for you. So I wouldn't recommend putting it in CI at first. Yeah. So test example front end. The main thing here is, in the applications that I work in, I happen to work with, the most important thing is that I expect that the right API calls are made when some user actions happen. So I'll show you what this looks like. Let's say I have a group form here. So this is for like creating a group inside of like kind of like a social networking type app. So I kind of mock out like my current user here. So it's as if like I arrive on this page as this user, like I'm already like logged in. I mock that like I kind of hard code the result of like some API requests that I made, so that you can like select, let's say like admins. You can have like a drop down, like who's the admin of this group, and I just say in advance like, okay, these are the admins that exist in the database that you can choose from. And then it's just like plain English, like I select the admin. So I choose like 2 admins, and then I fill out the form. I switch to like a different tab, blah, blah, blah. It's just like kind of reading as if like, okay, the user comes to this page, they fill out this tab, and then they press save. And I expect this, like the key thing, I expect that we make this API call with these fields. So from top to bottom, it just reads like plain English, and it's really, this one is kind of like a mix of like end user perspective and developer perspective. Like we're expecting like some behavior of the user, they're able to see these fields on the page in the first place. And then the developer perspective, that the API call is made with the expected object. And that's enough. Like I don't go like too much beyond like loading states is like okay, but it's okay to ignore also for the test, unless you want to be like really perfectionist, which is fine. I'm not too opinionated about that. Backend test, minimal knocking. So as if I'm using Postman, basically. This one, I do like a direct database insert, but in other test cases, because I already tested like the creation endpoint in another place. So once again, like as much as possible, reads like a plain English story. So I create a private group. Like I try to add myself to the group, and it doesn't work because I'm unauthenticated. And I try to add myself as a free user, and that makes a request. Admin can like accept me. Then I see myself as a member, and admin removes me, and then I don't see myself as a member anymore, and nothing happens if you remove it. So it's like a longer test, and it just kind of goes through the whole like story. You don't need like multiple like blocks for each. Like okay, you make the request, and another block like admin approves. It's just like a logical flow of the whole thing. And here is like a more like special case. This is we had like an application that is bigger. Actually, I'll come back to here. So yeah, this is like a medical review application. There's like documents, and you can ask like questions about the documents. So the backend has like tool calling. The LLM is aware like, okay, these documents exist, and you're able to like ask questions about them. And the manual test is like, okay, but pretty tedious. And honestly, it can be like simplified, especially like codifying like which files I have, and then expect, because like really the sensitive things that are like we have like the tool calling hooked up properly to like retrieve the contents of these files, and then pass these to like have the LLM provide answers to this. So in here, I actually make I use a hybrid approach. I have like my local test database, which gets like wiped between each run. It gets populated as if the document ingestion process like succeeded, and there's like two or three files. And then I just call the endpoint and just like let it run as it would naturally, calling the API, calling like the tool calls and everything. So here's like the test. Once again, I try to make it like as plain English as possible. I create a user with like a claim, like a medical file, and then I add like a file about PTSD and one about chronic pain. And then I have like a query, like what are their treatments? And then I ask a question just on the PTSD file selected, let's say. And then I actually call the API endpoint, like the chat endpoint. And then I do like a bit of more, because the LLM is like returning not every time exactly the same answer. So that's a bit of the challenge. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna do like an output with like scenario, expected, and actual, so that I do like manual review. Still, I get like with this whole like flow before that, I get a lot of gains of not having to do manually. I just like review the output of like my hard-coded preconditions. And so I have like expected behavior, test scenario, and then the actual result as well. I save it to a file, write test result to file, and it looks kind of like this. Let's do like a preview. So test scenario, 2 files available in the claim, PTSD and chronic pain. We selected only the PTSD file. And then we ask, what are the current treatment approaches? Blah, blah, blah. Expected that they should not like talk about the file that was not selected. We selected only PTSD. And then the actual response. So they were talking about like the treatment, blah, blah, blah. This is all like kind of made up medical data, by the way, don't worry. That would be kind of sketchy. But so it tells me like the source and everything. Okay, it's from this file at like page 1 and 2, this all related to like the prompt. So it's like a way also to test my prompt. So as I'm like editing my prompt, I can just rerun this and see like how differently the actual response comes back. So very convenient to avoiding all that manual like rerunning, redoing the files, and manual review, blah, blah, blah. It's another section. And so like even just like manual review of this file is already like got a lot of gains. And I figure I would do another tool call, like another API call of like, hey, like you're like a test runner assistant. Like please just review this file and tell me that it passes or not based on the expected and actual and test scenario. And it works sometimes, so I'm like, okay, to the garbage. It's okay. It's like part of my like 30 minutes a day. It's like, yeah, it's works kind of, but I'll come back to it. I already got like some gains, so I'm just gonna move on. So that was like my pragmatic approach here. So it takes maybe like 7 seconds to run like this whole thing, and yeah, I just like skip it from like my regular API test run. I think that's quite reasonable. So yeah, so right now I'm like a new man, you know, like I have a like it's pretty easy like to like consistently deliver results, and it's like it's my assistant now. So I feel like all that investment really paid off. And I mean, there's like more to learn, like, you know, like different new types of apps. Like let's say I work on like a mobile app. The tooling there and like the testing libraries, they have like some slight differences, like different trade-offs, like some things that you can mock or can't mock. So it's like case by case all the time. But I feel like it was a good run. I came a long way for like since my you know, like asking to like learn from testing. Now I just do it. Like I just have like the gains, and like sometimes I help out like my teammates and we discuss like what would be a good strategy. And yeah, happy stuff. Key takeaways. So being like pragmatic and like seeing like, am I creating more work for myself, or am I creating like support system that like frees me up, you know, not having to do all these manual tests all the time. That's really the key here. And being like deliberate in the practice, because like establishing a new habit, it's got to stick. So it's got to like work for you for it to stick. So just stick to it. I mean, you guys are all like using it regularly, so it feels like I did the whole presentation like for, anyway, preaching to the choir. Yeah, so test should work for you and not the other way around. That's really like my key learning, like what turned the whole thing around is that it works for me, not the other way around. And thank you so much.